On a scale of 0 to 10, how bad are things? I would say it's about 9.
I'd say a 6, maybe a 7. The investigations of Donald Trump, all of that, could push us up to a 9 or a 10, in the blink of an eye.
Okay, well, I think we're ready then.
I'm an American political journalist, but we pay attention to what's going on the other side of the pond.
And I lived for 11 and a half years there as well, so it still feels a bit like home, the US.
So there's a tweet yesterday that caught my eye, and this is what it said. It said, "We are a nation sleepwalking towards a cliff edge. If we do not pull ourselves from the brink, the damage will be permanent." I read that and I did a double take because I wasn't quite sure which country they were talking about, who the we in this was. So I guess my first question to you is, convince me, why are things worse on your side of the Atlantic?
I'm not sure that I'd want to do it quite that way round, Anthony. I would say it's about 9. And the reason I say this, and to get a bit serious for a second, I do think this is the worst peacetime crisis Britain has faced since the end of the Second World War, for 3 reasons, basically, Anthony. I mean, number 1, the issue is massive. I mean, Britain's relationship with the EU, it's not just about, deciding to leave a golf club. 2, the politicians are utterly and completely and hopelessly divided still about what to do about the results of that referendum in 2016. And then last of all, of course, and I think this is where things are really nasty here and maybe have similarities in the United States, the people are divided, and people are divided in a way that they haven't been in this country. I mean, normally people are divided on political lines, class line, wealth lines. Now it's more like the US, it's sort of cultural identity. So there you go, I'd give us about a 9 out of 10. Where are you, Anthony?
I mean, the crisis that we're having right now in the US, at least the immediate crisis, is such a ridiculous issue. It's $5 billion of wall funding in a U.S. federal budget that is $1 trillion. I mean, this is a symbolic battle about the direction of the country, who gets to set political priorities, whether it's Donald Trump or the Democrats in Congress. And larger, I think it kind of shows the systemic challenge with the American government right now, where can we, as a divided nation where people have very different views, can a government that inherently is usually divided, where you have different parties controlling different parts of government, can that function without just grinding to a halt? And I'm not sure it can.
Well, let me put this to you. I mean, I always remember when I was a reporter in the United States covering so many of Bill Clinton's speech. So I'm not sure if this one was after the Columbine school shooting or after the Oklahoma City bombing, but he said this, and I don't know whether he borrowed it from someone else, but it really resonated with me. He did that thing where, he bites his lip, and he said that there's nothing wrong about America
that cannot be cured by what is right with America.
Immensely powerful. I mean, do you think that's still true?
Yeah, I mean, Clinton had a way with words, and there, I mean, I will say there are signs of silver lining. There were compromises last year on criminal justice reform, and there were signs that people could come across the aisle and cooperate, and maybe there is still the potential that Americans have a short memory, that we see a lot of conflicts right now and they put it behind themselves and move on, and before you know it, something that seemed like a life or death battle, whether it's immigration now or trade now or anything like that, can change into, it's like a shrug. It's like, oh yeah, this is no longer a big deal, we all agree on it.
I mean, I guess that's one of the things you'd pick out. I'd certainly pick out from my American experience. The thing that I loved about living in the US was that sort of the can-do spirit. So no matter how many problems, sometimes self-inflicted, that America creates, it's also brilliant at coming up with the solutions. Whereas we here in the UK, our national slogan, I think a newspaper had a competition about this, was "mustn't grumble." But here's the thing, I suspect I may be wrong, but it'd be more difficult in the US. I mean, it's hard to imagine an American leader who could sort of bring together people who are super enthusiastic for Trump, or people in big cities who had been super enthusiastic for Barack Obama. What do you think?
Yeah, I know. And one of the things that you see time and time again with Donald Trump is the strength of his base. It's not a huge percentage of the U.S. population, 30 to 35%, but they're sticking with him through thick and thin. And even when Donald Trump is off the scene, one way or the other, whether it's re-election or in 2020, or if he's removed by some strange chance before then. Trumpism, the idea that there are people who are totally disenfranchised from the American political system, that's not changing.
Anthony, I think we need to wrap it up. So I would just say this: when people always say to me, how's it all going to end, Rob? How's this Brexit? How's it all going to end? And so I'm tempted to say what I often hear on the streets: well, it'll probably be all right, which is very British. And to go back to that phrase we had at the start, mustn't grumble. What about you, Anthony?
I think that eventually there'll be some sort of kicking the can down the road. But the problems, the divides in this country aren't going to go away. The reality is, the system is set up for conflict, and conflict is what we're getting. I said, 6 or a 7 for the American crisis, because long term, I think there are systemic problems, but there are immediate crises as well. The investigations of Donald Trump, you don't have to deal with anything quite like that with your government, that Donald Trump is being bedeviled by obstruction of justice, possible ties to Russia, his business dealings, all of that, could push us up to a 9 or a 10, in the blink of an eye.